When did you realize you fell for the propaganda? When I had my first year of university, I avoided all the different ethnicities to me, mostly because I was embarrassed I did not understand their accents. Exposure is one of the best ways to deal with it. Also, if you have a hard time understanding someone, tell them to speak slower. It usually helps. I'm from Eastern Europe originally, and as such, hating gay men was a thing. Don't live there anymore, but as far as I can tell, it still is. Long story short, I started working as a consultant to a company. Gathered once for some team meeting or whatnot, and there was this dude. Good lad. Loved Star Wars. Very knowledgeable and a true expert. We had a bunch of conversations prior. Turns out he had a boyfriend on the trip with him. I was there just thinking, well, I guess he is just a person and I couldn't care less of his sexuality. And with that, my homophobia was gone and I looked terribly down my former home for their thinking. When I was in high school, I thought I hated gays. Of course, nobody was ever out at my school, so I didn't really have a face to put it to. Then an hour north of town, a couple guys pretended to be gay to lure a gay guy out of a bar. They crucified him on a barbed wire fence and beat him to death. That changed me for the better. No one deserves that. I read something once that helps me in moments that you've described. I grew up in a small, predominantly white town in Ontario, so I didn't have much exposure to diversity until I left for college. To use your example, when you see someone that is Muslim and you have a thought or a reaction to move away, the first thought is what society has taught us, which can be unfortunate sometimes. The second thought is who you actually are and what you actually think, not what society has told you to think. The fact that you recognized it is a good thing. A very good thing. That way, when you have future interactions with people, you'll realize if you're doing something prejudiced without even realizing it. Even when you're aware that it's lies or propaganda, it can still get to you. Advertising is the same way. I've found myself thinking a little fondly of products I've never bought or seen solely because they ran annoying Spotify ads for a couple months. I knew the products were trash and overpriced, but constantly blasted a message can have an effect, even when you know it's fake. Other than avoiding any lies or propaganda, which is essentially impossible, all you can do is constantly ask yourself if you're reacting to something in an appropriate way and do your best to know why you react the way you do. I actually kind of have a positive story about this. As a kid, I didn't really think I was being raised that different from other people, except for moving a bunch and not being great at socializing. I thought everyone was being taught the same lessons I was. Be kind, be open, read books, tell an adult you trust if another adult tries to do you harm, and that bullies were just bad people choosing to be bad despite what we were all taught, and thus were unworthy of the kindness I would otherwise have owed them. Then, one day, 3 girls who had been bullying me and some other kids decided to race each other up a flight of concrete stairs with sand on them. On the way back up from recess, the rest of us were lined up and not paying attention to them, until we heard a thud, crash, scrape. One of them had fallen, teeth first, onto one of the stairs. The other 2 were laughing, and she was on the ground, too shocked to cry, and I hurried down to her. I asked if she was all right, and when she opened her mouth, blood and tooth shards fell out. I screamed for the teacher, who somehow hadn't noticed the commotion, and held my bully as she bled and waited for medical help. She did her best to say thank you, while her friends ignored us. The rest of the class was mortified deer in the headlights style until they were told to disperse so the nurse could take her. Months later, when she was able to return to school, she didn't even look at her friends, and instead sat by me and thanked me again. She muttered an apology she seemed scared to say, for having been mean to me when I had never been mean to her. I wish I could say we went on to be best friends and were getting married in a week. But I had to move again not long after. I realized that maybe some bullies were the irredeemable monsters that books and kid shows had said they were. But not all of them. And no bully is invincible. It cost me nothing to be kind to one of them when they were hurting. I had been tricked into thinking otherwise by media made by victims, who had never had a chance to reconcile with and help their bullies. Aesop Rock is a rapper. His lyrics are dense puzzles to unpack, which I love, but he raps about poverty and being on the fringe of society. A year into digging into his music, I messaged my sister, Aesop is amazing, but I'm realizing that it's hard to relate to some of these life experiences. She messaged back, why's that? You know he's white, right? Quote, I'm white, too. That one cutting question really opened my eyes. I've been raised not to think of race as a reason to hate people. My parents were pretty consistent with that. So I thought if I get along with people of other races, I must not be a racist, right? But racism is rarely an identity, and often just a behavior. In this case, I'd let racial social barriers seep in to the point that when I learned about a talented rapper who raps about hard times, I just assumed he was black. It wasn't a hateful thing, like I thought racism must be. It was an insidious set of assumptions that I didn't even notice myself making. Aesop being white doesn't change the parts of his lyrics that are foreign to me. But I did go back and listen closer, and thought about what it meant that I reflexively associated his struggles with the stereotypes of black rappers. Before that point, I obviously wasn't paying much attention to what the rappers I listened to looked like. After that point, I took a look and realized that regardless of my intent, there was a pretty stark lack of diversity in the voices I was listening to, and found some new rappers to add to my playlists. I don't know if this fits, but I am certain I'm a bad person for it. Whenever I see a video of two people fighting outside of combat sports, I always assume the bigger guy is a prick and hope the smaller guy wins. Or at least, I used to. I realized I was doing it, I stopped. TV and movies always seem to make the hero smaller to make things more dramatic, and often show big guys as bullies. Moving to Houston really broadened my horizons. In Atlanta there generally were only black and white people. Here, it's truly an entire assortment of folks from around the planet. This is a completely different situation than yours, but I fell for propaganda when I went to see Shen Yun and believed everything they said, then found out the truth about how the show is there. Religious propaganda full of lies. Man, this feels embarrassing to think about, but alright. Back in the early 2000s I bought a bottle of human pheromones that were supposed to make me irresistible to women. The product reviewers seemed like such honest guys. If it had the desired effect, it was only to make me irresistible as a pungent curiosity rather than potential mate. 60% of the time. It works every time. I fell for Brexit. Looking back now, I realize I was just a very sad young man who didn't believe he had any worth or future of his own. Transferring his situation onto the arguments for Britain's sovereignty, I wanted to feel good about myself. And the lies about our country's potential outside of the EU caught me at exactly the right time. I'll never forgive the right wing for that. I also nearly fell down the Jordan Peterson rabbit hole, but somehow managed to see through that one in time. When I had a friend who was afraid to tell me they were gay, and later, they were trans, and only trusted me enough after I didn't go ballistic on them coming out as gay. I was deep in the religious homophobic mindset until I saw firsthand that the LGBTQ+ agenda was just to exist without being hated. I was in high school and couldn't understand why I was so annoyed when my classmates, or anyone, spoke Spanish to each other. It didn't impact me in the slightest, and I never found people talking to their friends to be disruptive. BCI could tune them out. Never had a personal problem with these people either. Then I realized my racist-ass mother conditioned me at an extremely young age to hate Spanish, since she would always have a look of disgust on her face when she heard it being spoken and outwardly expressed her disdain towards immigrants, anyone who wasn't an American. Kinda shameful it took me that long to realize my feelings. When I learned the peaceful interactions between the Americans and the natives in the Thanksgiving story was a short-lived outlier. As a Mexican, 90% of the racism I've encountered is from black people. It's propaganda to assume only white people can be racist. Racism also comes in different forms. For example, white leftist racists trying to be nice will default to Spanish while engaging with me, even though I'm min-born and speak better English than they do. If I hold the door for them, they'll say gracias. Also, they'll talk down to Mexican or black people in an attempt to be polite without even realizing they're racist for assuming that your comprehension skills are subpar due to the color of your skin. I bought an expensive engagement ring. My dad is in the military and I've lived on a few bases all my life so far. He'd literally kick my ass if I ever demonstrated any of those kind of biases. Makes it a huge point to immediately confront it when his peers and or family friends indicate anything like that at all. I realized I fell for propaganda when I wanted to try a Hershey's Air Delight. I still want to. I'm still falling for the propaganda. Carbonated chocolate? Less chocolate? I don't care. I want it.
If you enjoyed this video, please check out our playlists full of similar content. Epicaricast is like doom scrolling for your ears. Please like, share, and subscribe.